Hi everyone, hail hail and welcome along to this very special episode of the Endless Celts Podcast. We're recording this show tonight in advance of the ACSOM charity weekender, which we're absolutely delighted to be a part of this weekend. All funds raised from any donations this weekend will be going to St Mary's in the Carlton, not only the birthplace of Celtic, but a major stakeholder in lots of local charitable causes. So we're really hoping to raise as much funds as we possibly can. We appreciate it's a hard time of year, but anything you have that you can donate, please do so. And again, we thank Paul John Dykes and all the ACSOM team for allowing us to be part of this. We're absolutely thrilled. Like I say, if you haven't heard of us before, we're a relatively new podcast. We just started this year. And as you can see along the bottom, we're available on all the usual outlets, so feel free to subscribe and listen in if you so desire to do so. So for those of you not familiar with the podcast, I'm not the usual host. I'm one of the regular contributors. Stephen and the other co-host, John, have decided to sit this one out tonight, so they've left it in the hands of us four mere mortals to try and keep things ticking along for tonight. So I'll just introduce we've got Ross, Willie and Francis joining us for tonight. How you doing, boys?
Very well, mate.
All good,
Very
mate.
well.
Good.
Yeah, all good.
Excited about this.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, absolutely. Couldn't agree more, Ross. I'm very much the same. So we had a wee debate in the group chat of what to sort of make our contribution about and what we would discuss. And after a bit of to and fro, I think we just sort of decided that in the week that these guys packed out the Hydro just for the ACSOM anniversary celebrations, we thought it quite fitting to go back over season 2000-2001, which was obviously the year that a certain Mr. Martin O'Neill took over and probably just changed the course of Celtic history in the process. But I think we'll start right at the beginning. I'll come to yourself first, Ross, and we'll sort of just kind of set the scene, as it were. You know, 1998, Celtic had stopped Rangers from winning 10 successive league titles, but Rangers responded quite forcefully with the appointment of Dick Advocaat, and Julie, going forward, won 5 out of 6 trophies available to them, and at the time, it looked very much like they were getting ready to have another crack at it, and we very much looked in the doldrums of the last league game against Rangers that season, finished in a 4-0 defeat. So to say that things were not looking rosy in the garden is a bit of an understatement. But then in the summer, 1st of June 2000, a certain Mr. O'Neill joined from Leicester City and uttered at the gates that he would do everything he possibly can to bring some success to the football club. I think he did that. Would you not agree?
Aye, absolutely. He changed, like you say, changed the course of Celtic as we knew it for probably 10, 11 years previous to him coming in. That was, I was going to say it's my earliest memories. It's not my earliest memories, but it's probably my earliest good memories, barring, like, say, the Scottish Cup, where we beat Airdrie, and when we stopped the 10 and stuff. But he came in and he changed it. And I think before he came in, like you touched on the previous season, I think some quarters of the media were saying that we were 5 years behind Rangers at that point before he came in. And I think we're going to touch on it, signings and stuff. He built for the back and just, don't get me wrong, he did get backed with a fair amount of money compared to previous managers, but he used it well, and it was just he done everything in his power to bring success to the football club. And I think we all knew when he came in with his record at Leicester that he was going to be a good appointment. Just how good he was going to be, we didn't realise just how good he was going to be. It was just a great season and a great 5 years under O'Neill, really.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Like you say, it's not my own earliest memory either, but it just to maybe coin Paul McStay's phrase, he just brought a buzz about the place. There was just something in the air from the moment he was sort of unveiled that it was a sort of signal, really, that times were a-changing at Celtic Park. And obviously, not to discount the previous sort of regimes, obviously, Dr. Joe, he maybe didn't bring silverware to the club, but he did lay some decent foundations in terms of the scouting process, obviously bringing in players that would go on to become key figures under O'Neill, like the likes of Johan Mialbi, to think of one, and obviously Lubo, and this year particularly. And also as well, for all we say, obviously the Barnes-Dalglish era was a bit of a disaster. Any sort of squad that loses a world-class talent like Henrik for most of the season, anyone would have possibly struggled. And again, the signings of the likes of Stilian Petrov and Bobby Petr also played a huge part in this season as well. But like you say, I just think there was something different when Martin came in. And as you touched to, Ross, I'll come to you next, Willie. Just regards to Ross obviously said that Martin was backed very much in the transfer market, and I think that was just almost a sign of the times, really. There's maybe generations of Celtic fans now can't really begin to imagine us spending so much money on perhaps one specific player or just how much that money would get you in the transfer market. But he went out and sort of made a few big statements straight away. He went off to the Euros and obviously brought in Jos Valgaeren from Roda, which is best part of £4 million. But his first signing, of course, was someone who's probably kind of stuck around longer than most. A club record signing at the time, a certain Mr. Chris Sutton. Kudos to obviously Celtic Park security for allowing him in the gates to sign that day. And you have to say £6 million. It was money well spent, wasn't it?
It sure was. What a player, and what a signing to play up alongside Henrik. I think Henrik said himself he's played with the world's best, and him himself has confessed that Sutton was his best partner up front and the best player he played with that suited his game. He didn't have the best time at Chelsea, obviously. I was actually seeing from the Hydro interview during the week there that Sutton said that when he met O'Neill, he admired him from afar because he was a Forest fan as a boy, and Martin just pulled him aside and said, "Listen, you've had a torrid time at Chelsea. You're a much better player than that. Come on up here. I've got a vision of what we're going to do." And boy, he's turned that vision into reality. The signings he made that season, like say Tomo and get him for peanuts, and he turned out to be arguably one of our greatest signings for the amount of money we spent on him. And he built that team. And at the time, I don't know if you guys see at the time. For me, it was always 4-4-2s, and O'Neill brought in this 3-5-2. And I remember younger being and thinking, we never no used to the 3-5-2, but boy, it worked. And just his whole persona and the way he was, and I don't think we had a character like that at Celtic, not for a long time anyway. Somebody that would hit the sky, jump to the ceiling whenever we scored a goal and celebrated like he was a fan. It's just so refreshing when he came in, and I mean, they're most probably my greatest memories as a Celtic fan. That team, which is arguably, obviously the Lions and stuff, but that team's arguably one of the greatest, if not the greatest Celtic side, definitely in the modern era anyway. And the team we had at the time, we were absolutely spoiled. At the time, you don't realise it, but now looking back, the players we had, it's just unbelievable that we were allowed to go and see our team play that football, and that we had these world-class players at our helm. And the majority of that's down to Martin O'Neill.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Like I say, that's sort of where I get. I think he sort of changed the identity of the club. It's sort of, like you say, we can't really ever compare anyone to the Lisbon Lions, but I think he was the identity and the rapport he had with his own players. It had that kind of feel about it. And you see it, the Lisbon Lions sort of waxed lyrical about Martin as well. You know, the way he would conduct himself around the pitch, and Francis, I actually think one of the earliest things, one of the first things he actually did was take the Lisbon Lions out for dinner. Obviously, as a Celtic fan growing up, he was a little bit starstruck. And Martin, although he's not a big drinker, did have a couple that night. And he said after the dessert, he finally plucked up the courage to go and have a wee chat to Tommy Gemmell. And he just says, "Mr. Gemmell, I'm just wanting to ask you just about that goal in the European Cup final." And apparently Tommy's reply was, "What one, son?" It's you at that age, it was still the little bit pattern. You can't beat it. But like we say, Francis, I think that's just why we're trying to set the scene before we really kind of get into the sort of how the fixture lists and results and that went. Just trying to let everyone realise just how far behind from the previous season that we'd felt to Rangers. There was a lot of chat about even getting close to them or getting within 7-8 points would be seen as real progress. But no one could have imagined. These days, treble triumphs for Celtic these days are as common for us as going for a loaf of bread. But back then, it'd been 32 years since Celtic had lifted all 3 domestic trophies in the one season. So no one could have predicted, even in our wildest dreams, what we were about to witness, could we?
Nah, I don't think so. Obviously, we'll get into more detail on that, but when you actually see the season, like the type of season we had, it was absolutely amazing. It was, like you said, like Martin O'Neill just, for us in the 21st century, changed the sort of the landscape of Scottish football and Celtic's favour and things like that. And like you said, the immortal words on the steps and that, saying he'll do everything possible to bring success to this club and stuff. And yeah, it was such a great season, and I can't wait to talk about
it. Well, let's just get down to business then, shall we? So, like I say, a few signings were made sort of early doors to sort of complement the great squad of players that were already there. They were just needing someone to give them in and give them that sort of confidence. And we had a few friendlies and early times in Europe. We played Jeunesse Esch in the UEFA Cup, and Mark Burchill made history that night by scoring the fastest hat-trick in European football history, which I believe still stands to this day, but don't quote me on that. And early league for him. Apparently Celtic played on the Sunday that week, and it was an opening match against Dundee United up at Tannadice, and that partnership that was going to be proved to be so fruitful, Lassen and Sutton, with a goal each to get us off to a good start. And then we had sort of 2 very tight home games, actually. It was a 1-0 win over Motherwell and a 2-1 win against Kilmarnock after going a goal behind. And the week after that, we then go to Tynecastle in a bit of a litmus test and blew them out the park, really. We were 3-0 up after 25 minutes, and the match eventually finished 4-2. Chris Sutton sort of gave an early indication of how he was going to be just an absolute terror for defenders up and down the length of the land. So going into a certain date, the 27th of August 2000, I don't know if you guys, if it's in your brain, in your memories much, but this was it, I'd say, yeah, absolutely, Roscoe, etched. The first 3 games were tight, but we got the 9 points out of 9. Sorry, 12 from 12. But Rangers had done the same. This was the first time in a long time that both sides would be lining up each other, the first derby with maximum points. Will we ever tire of talking about this game, Willie? Willie, you there?
Can you hear us?
Can you hear us?
Ever tired of talking about it?
Maybe he's tired of it talking about it, the guys. Silence here.
I was just reminiscing about all the goals that were scored. There's that many. I couldn't.
I thought you'd done a Stephen Murphy there.
I think it's the greatest derby game of all time in our lifetime, anyway. Some of the goals we scored and the famous Henrik goal, and it was just magic from start to finish. You couldn't believe it. It was just goal after goal after goal. At that point point in time. Against Rangers, they were the dominant force in Scottish football. So for us to do that and turn them over was just unbelievable. And like you say, because of the start of the season, when Martin O'Neill came in, and the kind of job he had to do, it's pretty similar to what Andrew's having to do this year. He's came in and it's like, we're so far behind him now, and it's a rebuilding job and this and that. But and we just absolutely hit the ground running that season, and the job he did was unbelievable. And one of the best managers about. You hear all the stories, you got all the smokers dinners and stuff, and the ex-players are talking about him. They're just absolutely in awe of him, and the man he was. So yeah, just magic, innit? 6-2 magic.
The stuff that Celtic dreams are made of, according to Ian Crocker, Ross. I don't think any of us could disagree with that particular line of thought. Henrik's chip goal to make it 4-1, best goal you've ever seen in a derby?
I would have to say so, aye. I can't think off the top of my head. Certainly, not in my lifetime, I can't think of a better goal. But aye, it was an unbelievable game. I can just remember just sitting there. Was it 11 or 12 minutes? We were 3-0 up.
Yeah.
For a long time before that, Celtic struggled to beat Rangers, and I can just remember sitting going, "Is this actually? Are we actually 3-0 up?" And the way it was going, you were looking at whoever you were sitting with and saying, "This could be anything here." Obviously, I mean, Rangers did come back into the game slightly. I mean, I know the score finished 6-2, but they did start to perform a bit better. I think they made it 3-1, if my memory serves me right. And then, Sutton and Lassen, just again, the partnership, the way they linked up, Sutton wins that header for Lassen to go on and score that goal. And then Sutton gets a goal at the end. And I think I have to say Larsen's second goal in that game, the header, although it was poor marking and it was a free header, he was just brilliant in the air, and that he just mastered that glancing header. I don't know if we'll touch on it later on in the podcast, but one of my favourite headers that I've ever seen Lassen scoring out with the two in the UEFA Cup final was the semi-final against Dundee United this season, where he's like beyond the front post. He sort of dives in. How he gets that in, I'll never know. He must have a neck like a giraffe. But unbelievable in there, unbelievable player, and absolutely privileged and honoured to have watched him in a Celtic shirt for 7 years. And what a guy to stay with us for as long as he did. He owed us nothing, but he just loved the club, and that just doesn't happen anymore. But what a game of football. Even the way Lambert smashes that in, the celebration, you see him running away, and the camera is at the back of his head, and you can just picture his face. He's like wide mouth, can't believe what's happening either. Can he hang? The whole stadium just like, you just couldn't believe it. But what an amazing game. Absolutely amazing game.
Absolutely. And Francis, another, I'm just almost going to be robbing from Ian Crocker's dictionary again here. Obviously, we always talk about Henrik's 2 goals, but as we say, Chris Sutton got another 2 in that derby as well. And Ian Crocker alluded to the fact that Martin O'Neill had said when he first signed him that all he was lacking was a bit of confidence. Well, he certainly wouldn't be lacking it after that game. And he is quoted when he first came, like you say, when he was discussed with Martin. Yes, Rangers at that point were, the benchmark, but he wasn't coming up here to settle for second place, wasn't he? He made it quite clear from the start that getting the league title back to Celtic Park was an obsession for him, really.
Well, let's not forget, Chris Sutton was a Premiership winner with Blackburn Rovers only a couple of seasons before it, so this was a guy that's a winner. Had scored goals at teams like Norwich and stuff like that, so it was a big player. It was a gamble as shelling out $6 million for him, considering he struggled at Chelsea. But you touched on it there, the first game against Dundee United, that's what anything you want to do as a striker to get off to a great start and done it. But then even better to come into a derby match and score after about 20 seconds or whatever it was, just scored that early into a game. And then obviously he finishes it off, but with the goal right at the end of the game. And I think when you look at the game as well, there was, for a neutral, it must have been brilliant to watch because there was so many good goals. I mean, even I think it was Van Bronckhorst who scored Rangers' second goal. That was actually a pretty decent free kick, if being all honest. But like Lambert's goal was brilliant, just to set up play by Moravcik. Petrov's header was a good goal. Sutton's second goal was just still got all that determination. Mahid running down the park, and obviously Larsson's header and the chip that we got the immortal line of "This is sensational" or "That is sensational." It was just it was just an absolutely brilliant game. And Chris Sutton obviously got off to a pretty good start as a Celtic player, but just absolutely cemented himself after that game. 2 goals in your first derby match. If you're not, like you say, if you're not confident before that, you're going to be flying straight after it.
Absolutely. And he became a bit of a god for us that day. And let's be honest, 21 years later, he still is. What more can you say about the man? We just love him to bits. Even some of the quotes that were coming out from the big event on Monday night there were just absolutely fantastic. And like I say, for any of the kids listening today, apparently 20 years ago, 6 million quid got you a Premier League winner. So, how times have changed.
And also Premier League managers would leave the likes of Leicester to come to us, not the opposite way about.
No, the opposite way, aye. Exactly, Willie.
Absolutely, absolutely.
I feel Leicester, funny enough.
Yeah, exactly. But after that game, and this is one of the things, again, just shows you how much football's changed. No transfer window back then, Ross. And Rangers responded in the way that Rangers often did. They spent big going into the autumn and to try and make sure that this was just going to be a blip on their jotter, and that would such a result wouldn't happen again. And the League Cup forum started after the international break. We progressed against Raith Rovers and we racked up some decent league wins at places that we were traditionally in the years gone by that we struggled at, your McDermott Parks, your Rugby Parks, and just sort of keeping the points ticking over. Normally, in years gone by again, the autumn was when we would start to sort of fade away a little bit. But for a change, we started pulling ahead. Rangers lost numerous games, and questions were starting to get asked of Dick Advocaat if he could sort of handle the heat with having a heavyweight opponent in Martin O'Neill. But like I say, the response in terms of the transfer market, they forked out what is still a Scottish League record, £12 million for Tore Andre Flo from Chelsea. Celtic responded by buying Alan Thompson from Aston Villa for just short of £3, and Didier Agathe on a permanent deal from Hibs for 35 grand. So who do you think got the better value for money?
Is that for me? Sorry.
That's for you, Roscoe. Sorry.
That's for me, aye. I think it's fair to say Celtic absolutely got the better value for money. No doubt about it. I mean, Didier Agathe, he came in at Hibs. I think he only played like a handful of games. And I don't know how it worked. I can't remember. But he just looked brilliant. And we just came in and got him for buttons. And he came in and was just absolutely top class. What a player he was, and what a signing! And he just slotted right into the team perfectly. And Alan Thompson, wow! I mean, good talk about that guy all day. Free kicks, what a left peg he had on him. So many big goals, especially in the Celtic Rangers games. He popped up with a lot. He popped up with one later on in the season, I'm sure, against Rangers. Just an outstanding signing, and it was like you say, football's totally changed. Imagine being able to bring guys like Thompson and that in midway through the season. I think he came in was it September or something like that? So just to bring guys like that in, and again, probably a proven Premier League player at the time, not a Premier League winner like Sutton, but Just the type of player we were able to get when Martin O'Neill was there was just a level above what we're used to. So I mean, they were 2 maybe 5 or 6. Like, you have to say, absolutely outstanding signings who are etched in the memory right to this day. Brilliant.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more. And again, domestically, Alan Thompson actually scored in his debut in a League Cup tie against Raith Rovers, and later on in the calendar year, we then knocked out Hearts with practically a reserve side to secure a place in the semi-final in the new year. But Francis, I'm just going to come to you.
It was 2-2, and I think it
was 2-2, and then the young boys came on and sort of stole the show. Although Lubo did get the decisive 4th goal by turning Robbie Nielsen inside out that night. I can always remember a young Robbie Nielsen who's still at Tynecastle. So we're not going to dwell too much on Europe this year, Francis. This will probably be for a future spin-off show. But I think I just wanted to touch on it briefly because after Genesesh, we drew Bordeaux in the autumn in the old UEFA Cup. It was classic knockout. And obviously we returned to France where Henrik had broke his leg the year before. Thankfully, he came back injury-free and he got us a precious away goal. So it was 1-1 going into Celtic Park, and Martin O'Neill had his first sort of experience of a Celtic away support, a massive Celtic away support in Bordeaux that night, and he's quoted as saying that he just couldn't believe what he was seeing behind the goals, that, you know, just the absolute sea of green and white, and sang right to the end. And kind of, it wasn't the norm for us back then. We got a positive result to take back to Celtic Park. And although the Bordeaux match ended in defeat, I always remember when Lubo scored to put us 1-0 up that night, the noise, I'd never really experienced anything like that at a European game at Parkhead. Obviously, the Champions League nights were still to come. But when you look at it that night, and we went toe-to-toe with a team that featured the likes of Christophe Dugarry and players like that, that you could almost argue that the blueprint or the green print, as it were, for Celtic in Europe under O'Neill for the following 5 years, we sort of seen the sort of early stages of that night. Even although we lost the match, we more than held our own against a top side.
I totally agree. Like you say, Bordeaux were blessed with some good players and stuff, and it was like, I can remember after the game as well, a lot of fans kind of hung about and cheered the team on. Like, well, not cheered the team on, but were still there. And it was just, I think everyone around the club at the time had a feeling that was something special was happening domestically, and then could see maybe, yes, we've went toe to toe with a pretty good Bordeaux team. If Martin O'Neill gets a couple more players in place and things like that, we could actually really be getting Celtic back to where they belong in Europe and challenging and competing in Europe. And yeah, it was sort of the early signs of it. And as we say, in the years to come, he turned Parkhead into a fortress in European nights. You were going there regardless of the opposition going. It was a surprise if you didn't get the 3 points in Europe not so long after this season that we're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the thing is as well, William, as I say, it ended in defeat, but we sort of ploughed on in the league. We did drop points, but we against the likes of Aberdeen, and our first drop points against Motherwell. But apart from that, it was really a clean slate, and we were really building up a nice little gap in the league that Rangers didn't really ever make up. And when we get to Christmas time, a certain Mr. Neil Lennon entered the fray, the final piece in the jigsaw. A lot of us would argue. It took him a while to get up. I think there was protracted sort of negotiations with Leicester, but finally, just before Christmas, he made his debut in an away game against Dundee, and it was a match that, funnily enough, we were outplayed for most of the match. We scored early doors, but then Dundee, who we can remember also at the time were big spenders, got back into the match and really were by far and away the better team that night. But then lo and behold, Didier Agathe more than repaid the 35 grand we paid for him by getting a late winner And I think that was almost the point where you realised that this was a side, Willie, that wasn't going to let this chance of winning the league slip away from them. It was a different mentality under Martin.
Definitely. Just going back, that's again, I talk about the man-manager side, and I think a lot of the players have touched on it and plenty of times before and said that he made them feel like mountains. That showed a different side this as well. I mean, like, they were a wonderful football inside, unbelievable, great football inside, great football to watch, but they could also show a bit of dig and get through these games and 1-0 here and there. And Neil Lennon, you're bang on, was the last piece of the jigsaw. He was perfect for that formation, for that group of players, to let the guys like Agat, Petros, Moravcik get forward and not have to worry because he's covering the defence in there in midfield. And he was one of the best at it at that time. I'm sure you'll agree. Another big fee, another big signing. What a team. Like, for start to finish, first 11, what a team. And for me, I think he was probably the one that was missing in the team to let everybody. And I know Lambert was he kind of sat there, but Lennon in there, just that cover for the defence. You could just let the front men do what they do best. And final jigsaw, perfect 11 for me. I don't think you can change much in that team.
Absolutely. And Ross, so again, going back to the sort, just coming up to the end of the Christmas period, but again, a strange time, the fact that season there was no New Year derby. The second derby at Ibrox was played in November, where Rangers got their probably one and only decent day out that day when they did turn us over. But we'll quickly brush over that. And obviously got on to the festive period. We absolutely, it's a Celtic show, isn't it? And we basically around Christmas time we did also again strengthen the side. We signed Rab Douglas to replace Johnny Gould in goals. We can always argue Rab was a bit of a mixed bag, but more than a decent shot stopper. And again, chose Celtic over Rangers, which again we weren't particularly used to. Any time around then there was a bidding war, Rangers would usually come out on top, but Rab more or less admitted that once he spoke to Martin, his mind was made up. And we also got, and if I remember correctly, he was a inclusion in your Dream 11 from the O'Neill era, but a few shows back.
Mr. Vega.
We got Mr. Ramon Vega, who scored 2 on loan from Spurs, who scored 2 on his debut. We then had another tricky tie away on Boxing Day up at Tannadice, which again we came through with, which led us up to the last game before the winter break, which was a 6-0 win against Kilmarnock. I don't know if anyone remembers, but it's probably one of my favourite passes of a football I've ever seen, when Johan Mialbi just pings it down the right wing for Stilian Petrov to latch onto it, and he crosses it over for Henrik. So I think that was his second or the third goal of that game. He scored 4 and Sutton got 2. And that set us off into the winter break. And that was sort of the first time any of us had really experienced that. But do you think a winter break and coming back just into cup action with such a lead, and that kind of helped the players just sort of say, right, we've got a semi-final already booked, the Scottish Cup's about to start, we're miles ahead in the league, it's time just to get the gas back up, foot on the gas again, or even on Rangers' neck, and just go as hard as you can?
Well, I mean, you say on Rangers' neck, but I don't even think they were second at that point. I think Hibs were our closest challengers.
Yeah, you might be right. Hibs and Hearts.
I think Rangers overtook Hibs later in the season, but Hibs really gave a good account of themselves that season. And actually, I think they gave Celtic some of their toughest tests in individual games. I think they took a point at Parkhead later in the season. But I think to touch on the winter break, I think it, as a fan, you would rather it wasn't there, because you like the games coming thick and fast every week. But as a player and a squad and a team, I think it came at a perfect moment for them. They weren't in memory, I don't think they were flagging or struggling, but just recharge your batteries. They went away out. Sure, they went away out to America and played a couple of games in front of some of our fans that are in America, because again we've got a worldwide fan base because we're a massive club. But so I gave the fans over there a chance to experience the team in the flesh, recharged the batteries, got a wee suntan, and came back to go again.
Absolutely. And like I say, it started off with a win in the Scottish Cup, which we then had to go to a replay in the next round against Dunfermline. We drew 2-2 at East End Park, but thankfully your pal Ross Ramon Vega did the business in the replay by scoring a couple of goals along with Henrik, and that put us into the quarters against Hearts. But more on that later. Sort of back to February time, Willie, and again, as Ross has alluded to, around that time we had dropped points against Hibs, but we did have the third derby of the season coming up against Rangers, and it was a very tight game, although it's certainly not the 6-2, but the 1-0 result was absolutely vital, wasn't it, just to keep that gap at the top of the table. And again, a break from what we were used to when it was the crunch games, when it was a narrow win so often. Around in those years, it was Rangers that would come out on top, but that time it was Celtic keeping the 3 points at Parkhead.
William,
you want to talk about it again?
Is he froze?
I'm not sure. Has he froze?
Oh, he's gone, man.
I think he may be off, so we'll come back to Willie. So, Franco, I'll put that question to yourself at the moment. Just sort of how important that game was to sort of just keep that 12-point gap there.
Yeah, it's like the Kenny Derby match. It's always important to win it. It's always nice to win it, and I think obviously after losing 5-1 to them at Ibrox, it's maybe questions were getting asked even low. Like say we had a 12-point advantage in the league, but your mentality and that was maybe getting questions and stuff. And yeah, it was a tight, nervy game and stuff. And then Alan Thompson, just with a nice wee toe poke, scored one of many big goals and one of many big goals against Rangers. So it just really cemented us back into the flow of the sort of the league campaign, to say, look, we're still here. We're not going anywhere. We're going at this strong. We're going to keep going and going and going. Just proved the winning machine that Martin O'Neill turned this team into.
Relentless.
Absolutely. That's absolutely the word I was going to go for us. They were just relentless, and just it was always, they were just like a machine that kept going, really, weren't they? Especially in this season. Wally, can you hear us okay? Are you back in from the... He's back from his hidden bunker.
I thought you'd put it.
Just like Lineker there, I needed it. I was running about like a dog there on the ground, just needed a wee break. I'll be back. That's me back. All right.
I thought you'd put the invisibility cloak
on. I'll come to you for this one as well, because just after the Rangers game, again, when we've got a bit of a gap, there's also another league game I just wanted to bring out, because again, it's just getting to that point where, as I say, we weren't used to winning leagues, and just the nerves were starting to kick in. It was a midweek game, a home tie against Motherwell, where Andy Gorham, who was playing for Motherwell at the time, was just having one of those games where we just couldn't get past them. And as you can imagine, the tension in the stands was starting to get a bit unbearable. But with about 7-8 minutes to go, Celtic got a free kick about 25 yards out. And as you can imagine, from that kind of distance, it would take something special to beat Andy Gorham. But then again, if Andy Gorham is Superman, then Lubo Moravcik had kryptonite in his boots that night, didn't he? When he bent that free kick around the wall. Absolutely unstoppable to keep our 12-point advantage. It was a bit of a belter, wasn't it?
Unbelievable. What a player. I'll never forget the first time I seen him in the flesh. And we played, I think it was Hearts we played. My dad took me along, and he took a corner for one side with his right foot, straight back out for a corner for the left side, and he went and taken that with his left foot. And I remember just thinking, my goodness, got him in at that age as well. What a player. Like you're saying about how the whole mentality, again, I think that's O'Neill instilling that, and the players he brought in. Everybody in that team was a leader. You had Mialbys, Lambert, Lennon, Larsens, Suttons, Tomos. You imagine all these guys in the changing room. If it's not going their way, they'll be tearing lumps at each other. Absolutely packed full of leaders. And I think you touched on it. Like in the past, we were mostly chasing Rangers at the time in previous seasons, and we did probably well under the pressure a lot of times. But it's just Neil just instilled this absolute belief in us, and like we can beat anybody on our day. And you can't forget that Rangers side is a proper side. I think they had about 90% of the Dutch national team in their squad at the time, along with others. This wasn't just a walkover over an easy team. They were a proper side at the time. So for us to blow them away like we did, especially after the season before, I think we were 21 points or so behind the season before when Barnes was in charge. So to turn that around in one season is just remarkable.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And like you say, Rangers, absolutely. I think that's what makes the achievement even greater, just how good a side Rangers were at the time. Like you say, absolutely packed, back to front with Dutch superstars, which absolutely, of course, is the reason why the fans all wore orange at the cup final the year before. I'm sure there was no other reasons why. But Ross, we'll come to yourself just regarding the other derby that took place around that time. Was at Hampden, the League Cup semi-final. Again, another match where Rangers would traditionally have been the favourites. The League Cup was always a trophy that they used to sort of have the jinx on us. But again, Ramon Vega wins the header, cannons off the bar, Sutton puts it in on the half volley. A couple of minutes later, Henrik chips Kloss again. We're 2-0 up after 15, 16 minutes, and we're thinking, is this going to be another 6-2? But we were quite happy with a place in the final on a 3-1, weren't we?
Oh, aye, absolutely. My favourite moment of that game was Bob Malcolm falling flat in his face. But to touch on the... Did you say it was Sutton that scored the first goal?
It was. Now, Vega does the header, but it cannons off the bar and Sutton volleys it in. But the camera goes straight to Ramon Vega.
Well, that's what I'm going to say, right? Because actually, I can remember being in the pub watching that game, right? And I had Vega to score the first goal. He's headered it. And then the camera panned to him. I was jumping about the pub going, yes, I've won the bet and all that. And then the next minute it was like Sutton had scored and I was like, what? Didn't even see him putting it in the net. I totally assumed it was Vega. But I quickly got over it when we brushed him aside and won 3-1 and got into the final of the cup. And like you say, that was another like sort of duck, if you like, broke. Beat Rangers in the cup. We got over the line with a game against them that you've touched on that looked like it was going to be 0-0. And Alan Thompson popped up and was there Brian Laudrup that day. It was a great game, and it's one that sticks in the memory, that semi-final, because of that bet. But I mean, I'm over it now. Just
don't look like it, to be fair.
I think I was getting back about 30 quid or something. That's a lot of money when you were an apprentice. A lot of money when you were earning £30 a week in an apprenticeship.
I got you more than a few halves in the minors at that point. Tell me about that. So like I say, that result booked us our spot in the first cup final of the season. The first match where we actually sported that fantastic hoops that Ross is sporting tonight. It came out on St. Patrick's Day, so you can imagine there was more than a few purchases of it in the stands. And I just wanted to, just before that match, the week before it, actually, Stilian Petrov suffered a horrific leg break, similar into what Henrik had done the year before, and that he was a player completely transformed under Martin O'Neill Woolley. So we just thought, God, is this going to derail our season as well? But you just think, again, the guy stepped in and we got the business done. But just a quick sort of thing, your thoughts on Stilian Petrov and his contribution and his transformation into a Celtic legend that season.
Unbelievable. Again, I mean, I don't know where we find these guys. Ross, we went to a smokers room and he was discussing about when Martin O'Neill came in actually, and he says that at the time Barnes and that he came across, he didn't know the language, he was still a young boy. I think he said that Barnes was in training, going in at the knee, slide challenging them on that.
Aye.
Like, what am I doing here? And just to give a wee insight, what he says about Martin O'Neill, I think he was talking about when he was with the club under Barnes, and his girlfriend and his dad and all that. They're all back home in Bulgaria, and they're not getting across to see him. And I think he had an appearance bonus. And all he needed was one more appearance to get a bonus. And with that bonus, he was going to pay for his girlfriend and his dad to come over on a flight, see a game, and obviously spend some time with them. And for whatever reason, Barnes and that didn't play him. And he never got his bonus. And he said he came back that pre-season, he was overweight. He was thinking he's not got a future at the club. And Martin O'Neill came in. And I think he said the first conversation he had with Martin O'Neill was... Martin O'Neill sat him down in his office and said, right, first of all, that contract you're on is ridiculous. We're going to give you a new one. I'm going to pay you what you deserve to get paid. Gave him his vision. He says, you need to work hard if you want to be in this team, but I believe you got what it takes. And Stan said he made him feel like a man mountain. Went away, trained his arse off, and lost about 3 stone and turned into the machine that he was that season. And what a player and what a servant he was. He could do everything in the midfield. He was tough tackling. He could pass the balls. He got in the box and scored goals, a bit like a Lampard. What a player, and what a job he did for us. Again, just another little view on how Martin O'Neill's man management turns a team. There's these players. We've seen it with Rodgers and stuff like that as well. Forrest being a prime example, looking like they're down and out, and then a new manager comes in, puts a bit of belief in them, and they just turn into a total different player. And thankfully, that's what Martin O'Neill did with Stan, and what a season he had.
Absolutely.
So Francis, English at a burger van.
Aye, he's made his burger van. He says he wanted to learn English, so he just stood there and listened to what everybody was saying.
Aye, that's right.
You're hearing Queen's English around the burger van, absolutely. So, Francis, around that time, as I say, it was the cup final. The first of the treble was wrapped up with a 3-0 victory over Kilmarnock, where Henrik made again another wee bit of history, scored a hat-trick in the final. It was absolutely a terrific second half performance. The first half wasn't great, and then obviously Chris Sutton was actually red-carded in the match. But we got the first trophy out the way, and we just had a few more league games to go, and then we would be league champions. But just before we clinched it, to do that, we needed 9 points for 9, and we had to go up to Pataudry, where we won again. Didier Agat, proving his worth, scored a late winner. We then scored another late winner at at Celtic Park against Dundee in the midweek to set up the league championship clincher. Before the split, as I said, that was the first year that the split was happening. And 20 years later, I'm still trying to work out what the point of it is, but that's for another show, no doubt. But believe it or not, the game was actually on Sky Box Office that day. That's how confident Sky were, how good we were at the time. We commanded a slot on Sky Box Office, and it was a match against St Mirren. And where, of all the unlikeliest of heroes, Tommy Johnson scored the winner, and it was a pretty nervous affair, pretty similar almost to St Johnstone when we stopped to 10 a few years previously. A match where we maybe should have won by more, ended up being a bit nervous. But just to think, as we've spoke about, from where we were at one point the year before, 21 points behind Rangers, we had secured the title before the Easter holidays. That's not bad going, isn't it?
It's okay, isn't it? It's kind of asked for anything more. Like you say, obviously you win the League Cup final. It's back then it was played a wee bit later than what it is now, but it's still played early enough that if you're in a good position in the league, you win a trophy, it gives you a wee kick to keep going. You get a wee feel for winning a trophy, so you kick on. And yeah, like you said, we went up to Aberdeen. It's even back then we liked a wee important result up at Pataudry. It seems to have a wee thing Exton Celtic, just the Tawdry and big results. And going on to obviously the St Mirren game where Tommy Johnson, I think Tommy Johnson actually had a pretty decent season that season in terms of he scored, I'm not saying he scored lots of it, but he seemed to score important goals, had quite a few assists and stuff. And so he'll always have a wee bit of history in Celtic, the fact that his goal technically he scored the goal that secured the league, so to speak, that season. So, and then he won it with what it would have been 6 games still to play. It was just party time for us for a couple months.
Absolutely, party time indeed. But of course, the following week, Ross, we booked our place in the Scottish Cup final with beating Dundee United in the semis. Henrik scoring that magnificent header, as you alluded to earlier, to set us up on our way, and 2 further goals in the second half sealed our spot in the cup final. But as Francis alluded to, we had a couple of games before that we had to sort of round the season off, and the laptop loyal and all the Daily Record and their friends at the Sun were telling us that this was going to be the Celtic have had a great season, but obviously there was one final match against Rangers to be played at Ibrox, where we hadn't won for 6.5 years, and normal service would be resumed and the Teddy Bears would have a nice day in the sunshine. Lubo and Henrik had other ideas, didn't they?
Oh, aye. I mean, I remember I actually missed the start of that game because I was working. I mean, I was about a second year apprentice, so God knows what I was doing working on a Sunday, but I was
working on the Sabbath, I tell you.
I know.
Blasphemy.
I must have got coerced into it. But I think it was Lubo opened the scoring that day.
Aye.
Yeah, Lubo got the first 2. Yeah.
Aye. So I missed his first goal. Obviously, he didn't have the benefit of recording and stuff then, so it was just missed. But aye, I mean, Celtic, I don't know, was it something like maybe, I think it was about 6 years or something for they'd won at Ibrox.
6.5.
Aye, and again, like the 6-2 game, I've come in, it's 1-0, and you're like, okay, we're winning 1-0 at Ibrox, there's a long way to go. And obviously, we've been the better team throughout the course of the season. But 2-0, 3-0, you're again in disbelief. This is Ibrox we're at. Do you know what I mean? This just doesn't happen, but it did, and it continued to happen after that, because as we've touched on, O'Neill changed the course of Celtic in a new century, and we've never looked back since. But even Lassen's goal that day, to get it in for that angle, was just epitomised him again. He was just a phenomenal goal scorer. He scored every single type of goal you could possibly think of. And I think that season he finished with like 53 goals or something. I mean, if you've got a guy that's scoring you 53 goals in one season, you're going to win every single trophy. You just are.
See that third goal at Ibrox? That third goal at Ibrox, the third goal at Ibrox, if you're Sean Maloney, you're sliding in and nicking that like, hey, all day.
Aye, absolutely.
He'd have got pelters, but he'd have got pelters.
I didn't care. No way. Henrik, you've got 52 goals. I'm nicking this one.
Maybe he couldn't reach it. Three short legs.
I think it was just it's just the way that all the players went up to the Celtic end that day, just giving it big licks. It was just they just knew that nobody was getting close to them in Scotland that season. It was just absolutely perfect. And Wally, I'll quickly go to Henrik just before we touch on the cup final and we wrap up. Just a sort of special mention about Henrik, like you say, European Golden Boot winner that year. The guy just had everything, and I've often said this when we run the pub. Obviously, around the top strikers in Europe that time, obviously Michael Owen won European Player of the Year that year, but Thierry Henry hadn't, sort of peaked at Arsenal yet. Ruud van Nistelrooy hadn't signed for Man United. Raul maybe was the top dog at Madrid. Barcelona were having their barn years. You may be thinking Martin Palermo at Boca Juniors, who we all used to sign on Champ Manager. But I can't really think of. You wouldn't have swapped any of them for Henrik, wouldn't you? The guy was just an absolute god.
unbelievable. I think the reason he's not winning the sort of titles is because of the league he was in and the club he was at. Let's not forget, I think, for the Golden Boot, I might be wrong. We might look a dafty here, but in the Scottish, was it not like a point system for each goal? In the Scottish league was less points than it was in Serie A and English Premier League and that. So to still go on and win that is that's even more mind blowing. We could do about 25 podcasts just on Henrik Lassen. What can you say about the player that's not already been said? And we've touched on that in our podcast before. And for me, more than anything, more than the talent, more than the player, more than the hard work he was, it's the loyalty to stay at the club. And when he talks about it, how his family was settled, he was happy, he was on a good contract, he was playing European football. Why would they want to go anywhere else? Why would they not want to play in front of the best fans in the world? That is not something that happens in the game nowadays, and it wasn't something that happened in the game back then either. What a player, what a person. I'm just absolutely privileged to being able to see him in the flesh and be able to enjoy him playing at my football club for as many years as he did. It's just an absolute joy and privilege.
Absolutely. Well, I'll absolutely second that. I'm sure the boys would as well.
I just think
sorry, Frank,
I was going to say, just as well Vim knew about that wee clause in the contract there.
Absolutely. I mean, Vim Janssen, there's another one we could do a show on. You know, he turned up, stopped the tent, signed the king and left the building. You know, what a boss. Absolute legend.
Mic drop.
But Ross, just to round off, we had a couple of league games after Rangers. A couple of them were actually, we lost a couple of the last two league games, believe it or not, at Kilmarnock and Dundee at home. But I think we can, I'm pretty sure we can forgive the boys for that, because we had a Scottish Cup final to prepare for against a team, like you say, who gave us all sorts of issues that season in Hibs. And again, just like in the League Cup final, we ran out 3-0 winners. Henrik didn't quite equal Dixie Dean's record to scoring a hat-trick in a League Cup and Scottish Cup final in the same season, but he did score two cracking goals, along with Jackie McNamara, who scored when he came on. And our first treble in 32 years was secured. It was a special day, wasn't it?
Oh, God, I can't mind much of that day, to be honest with you. I think I was going on. I was nearly 18, so I was. I enjoyed myself. I was breaking the law. I was breaking the law, man. I didn't care. We'd won a treble. It was a great performance against a team who were playing really well at the time, and they just blew them off the park. Henrik Lassen, once again, outstanding in a final. 5 goals in 2 finals. Unbelievable effort. He just was a big game player. And Jackie McNamara, brilliant finish. And he was outstanding for Celtic that season, along with everybody else. And again, he was a player that was already at the club, and they brought in all these great players, and he just slotted in and didn't look out of place amongst them. It was what a day, and it was in the sun. Just brilliant.
Absolutely, Hampden in the sun, yes. Indeed. And like you say, boys, those memories is something that will last with us forever. And it certainly didn't prove to be a one season wonder, because Martin, in the 5 years he was with us, 3 league titles, 3 Scottish Cups, a League Cup, and of course that magical season where we made it all the way to the UEFA Cup final in Seville. More of that on another podcast, I'm sure. Maybe Ross will take the reins for that one, I think. But just to sort of round off, as I say, I agree, it was just an incredible season. Something, as I say, we're so used to Celtic being successful now, but it was something that we weren't overly familiar with at that point, and it just sort of changed the mindset. And like you say, in the years after that, we went from being a team that were at the start of that season, were just hoping to get close to Rangers to make it a bit of a competition, and within 3 years we were in a major European final. If that doesn't cement legendary status, I don't know what does. And I think it's quite fitting, like we touched on earlier, that those guys, that sort of band of brothers, as Chris Sutton alluded to them, named them, 20 years later, they packed out the Hydro at the just a couple of nights ago there. It just shows you, whilst no team may or will ever probably eclipse the achievements of the Lisbon Lions, our generation of supporters, for us guys, those treble winning heroes are probably our version of them, aren't they?
Oh,
Definitely.
I didn't even know who that was. Sorry, Wally, go.
Do you know what? I didn't. It was probably just
the team is like, and like you said, we've had much success since then. Some wonderful players come through the doors at Celtic. Some wonderful football played, and many managers after them have done wonderful jobs as well. But in my lifetime, there's not a team come even close to that team that Martin O'Neill built, especially in that season and the year after. From back to front, just absolute warriors, and the likes of Moravchik, who for me was just unplayable in his day. And a team with a king in it. There's nobody beating that team. What a job he did. And
you're absolutely you're bang on, Willie, because like we as we spoke about that when we did the sort of the two generations, we were pretty much in agreement that team would have had the Invincibles on toast, you know. So that kind of just shows you just how good they were. Absolutely. And as I say, as you touched on earlier, guys, we've got a similar rebuilding job this year, with a certain Mr. Postecoglou being tasked with the responsibility. We don't know how the season's going to unfold, but let's just say for what we've seen so far, we're very happy, and here's hoping in 20 years' time when we're doing this on some sort of 3D imaging, because when we're on the top of the podcast pile, we'll be talking about how good this season ended up being as well. But that's for another day, I'm sure. But in terms of the podcast tonight, for our contribution for ACSOM, that's pretty much us, and we can only thank Martin for giving us and the players for giving us the memories to talk about. Have you enjoyed this wee trip down memory lane tonight?
Yeah,
loved that.
Cannot believe it's 20 years ago. Cannot believe it's 20 years.
Makes you realise how old you are, Willie.
I know. But by the way, 20-year-old top still fits like a glove.
Aye, that's because we all wore like triple XL back then. It needed to be baggy.
Don't take this away from me, Willie.
Well, if it makes you feel any better, mine doesn't fit quite as well.
I can see that. Cut glass with things.
He's been a petrol.
One of you guys might be able to confirm this rumour, right? See the top Willie's wearing? There's a lot of rumour going around the time that Henrik designed that for Umbro when he was off with his leg break. Do any of you know if that's true or not? I don't know.
No, I've never even heard that.
I've heard the rumour that Henrik designed it. And listen, if he did, he'd have a career in fashion as well if he hadn't been a footballing god, because it's one of my favourite ever away tops as well.
Henrik,
but no,
I think Henrik
aye, possibly. I'll believe anything when it comes to Henrik. You know me.
I'm sure he hit a horse with an uppercut once, and that's how giraffe were created.
What do you mean? Is that not true? Like, I've got hundreds of folk that story. But no, guys, honestly, thanks very much. You have been absolutely brilliant. It's been a great wee trip down memory lane, and we've absolutely loved doing this for, like I say earlier, the ACSOM charity weekend. This will all be going out over the weekend of December 4th and 5th. There'll be lots of other podcasts getting involved, lots more content, so check it out when you can. And also, if you can, please donate what you can to the charity. And hopefully that'll just make a lot of vulnerable people's Christmas that little bit easier to get through. But that's us for tonight. So thanks again to the boys. And all the best. Cheers.